Hey guys, Jason here. Alright, so I want to talk about kind of the evolution of Schlage Deadbolts over the years and to showcase off the latest version, which is the best in my opinion. So, of course, Schlage's been around for a long time, pretty much forever in the US lock world. And they had an earlier version of that deadbolt that I'm not going to really talk about because it's pretty much the same style. But basically, the evolution of Schlage Deadbolts has gone B160, B360, and B60 series. Now, of course, there's the grade 1 commercial 660s and some other oddballs that they made throughout the years, but these were pretty much the standard. The B160 from like the 60s to the 80s, or late 90s, I'm sorry. And then they had 360 out for a while, which I was able to find one. And nowadays it's the B60 series, which is pretty much the predominant and actually the best deadbolt style on the market. So we're going to talk about the differences real quick. We'll start off with the B160 and also the packaging, which these two are the same lock. They went from smaller box packaging to the bigger box packaging to accommodate a plastic carrier for the parts to protect the lock better. And pretty much didn't make any changes except for one thing. So we look at this one and we see it's a 2 3/8 back set, which is a standard residential back set. And then we look at this one and we see it is a adjustable back set. So we're pretty much around the time that they switched to the bigger boxes, I believe, is when they went to the adjustable bolt, which was one kind of downfall. Now, here's the packaging for it. It used to just be this styrofoam stuff. It came with a separate paper template, and back then you used the 1.5" holes, you'll notice. You could use a 2 1/8" hole, but you would have to use the separate spacer ring, which went like that. And most anybody that has been around any doors in the past 30 years has probably seen a lock like this on the door. So here's the latch. It was fixed 2 3/8. If you had a 2 3/4 door, you had to get the different length latch. And it came with your security strike with the plate that goes on front, nickel silver keys, and I'll show you in a minute. It has nickel silver pins in the locks, and the mounting screws, and of course the screws to hold the latch in. And originally, before, they came with the metal dust cover, and then they started using the plastic dust cup, which goes behind this. So we have the plastic dust cup, and it kind of actually would go behind the, I don't know if I have one out or not, but it goes through the security strike. It would go through it, so that would be like a 3-layer kind of plate there. And one of the weaknesses, of course, a lot of people know on the double cylinder version of these, there were these infamous little tail pieces that interact with the latch. And that's what turns it when you turn the key. And you had to, this is the same with the single cylinder too, it just uses one flat rod, but they were less prone to breaking on the single. You push and then turn this, and basically that controls the latch. And these just had a nasty habit of breaking pretty often. Not so much on the single cylinder, they didn't break as often, but it works the same. It just angles and goes in there. So if we look at that, you know, it came with the security plate, came with a key tag that you could use, and the directions. Oh, and the single cylinder, I'll show you that. Another problem was this would sometimes break. So if we're looking at exact differences here, we see nickel silver keys, And if we take this lock apart real quick, you could switch this core out. Had a removable cylinder if you needed to change it. But when we take it apart, we see that there are actually nickel silver bottom pins in there which provide resistance against wear. And one thing is it's a solid brass plug with a solid cylinder. And it had fairly tight tolerances. Okay. So then, of course, after the small box, we shifted over to the larger box to accommodate basically the plastic insert that they used. I guess they had numerous cases of shipment problems with the locks getting, I guess, beat up in these. But around that same time, when they shifted this, you'll see that the template is actually part of the box itself, which is kind of a neat idea because it's cardboard instead of paper. And you'll see that it still came with all the same parts that the other one did. Plastic dust cup, nickel silver keys, same style. And everything was just in this plastic container, but they switched to an adjustable latch. Now this latch was not my favorite at all. The adjustable latches, I always tried to only do the fixed latches because if it twists any little which way, it gets hard to lock. These were a bit more problematic, the adjustable latches. So I wasn't fond of that. I still always tried to use the fixed latch when possible because we had tons of them. So they're in kind of, like I said, I guess maybe from the 60s to the mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. I can't remember offhand, but then they switched to what they called the wonderful new design of the B360. And if we take this out, we'll notice one very humorous thing: grade 1 security features with a star. Now, may not be in here, but I don't know what the star, I guess they starred that, and there was a reference somewhere in the paperwork that the features that made it a grade 1. Why? Because it, in my opinion, is one of the most horrible designs of a deadbolt ever created. This was in this box. I don't know if it fell in there or if it came like that. I'm thinking this fell in there because this has paper on it and they didn't really paper coat. They stopped paper coating it back here. It did come with the drive-in style adjustment, which actually was this one. You take the plastic and you pry this apart and you snap this on, and this is supposed to snap around that to provide a drive-in latch. I'm pretty sure, I don't recall really offhand whether it came with the security screws and the security strike plate. So, but aside from that, we will see the bolt was this was one of the most horrible designs in history, in my opinion, and I was so glad when they stopped making it. It got to the point where we weren't even recommending Schlage at this time. So this deadbolt basically snaps together. It was very hard to get in the door because this post had to go into the sleeve right here. This was, I guess, designed to make it easier to put together, but it caused pretty much nothing but problems. And once you get it together, you squeeze it together, then you run your screws through. Very problematic. The latch is only held with the pin from the outer cylinder, that when you turn that pin, it sucks the latch in and out. So again, we were thrilled when they stopped making this design. But if you took it apart, this came with brass keys. This is kind of the time that they shifted to brass keys. And they still had solid brass cylinders. And the cylinders were still removable. Let me move this up just so you'll see them taking it off. I don't have the key, but if I look in there, it looks like those pins are brass pins. They may be nickel silver, but yeah, they were nickel silver. So it was a solid brass cylinder still with nickel silver pins. The keys may or may not, I can't recall, but I think the keys have been shifted to brass to save them money. But overall, this design was around for 5 or 6, 7 years, just long enough for them to realize how horrible it was. So then they shifted to the mass market with the B62 series. Now the B62 series comes in a clamshell pack or comes in this box, and we get them in the box style. So we'll see that it has a kind of a cardboard fiber carrier, cardboard fiber little mini box that comes in here that protects all the items. And actually, when the B60 series, this is the latest version of the B60 series. The initial version of the B60 series had a solid brass plug. Only in the last, I guess, year or so, they have changed the design of their core. And we'll show you that in a minute. One thing they did was they significantly improved the latch. This is the best latch on the market for the residential market. It is also the biggest latch. And if you compare it to the old B160, you will see the obvious difference. Now, Schlage did offer one style of the 160 bolt. I can't remember the number, but it did come with a heavy latch like this. But it was more kind of an unusual product. You didn't see it a whole lot. So you will see the obvious difference in the latch size and how it is built compared to the old adjustable latch, which I will pull back out here just to show you. Made with heavier steel. The adjustment feature has a good solid pin instead of this kind of little notch that they put in here, which caused a lot of problems. So much better latch. The brass keys, this is when they shifted pretty much totally away from nickel silver keys. And so let's see, it also very commonly comes with what you see most nowadays is they have done away with the security strike part. Comes with your directions and your template. It comes with 4 short screws. Comes with the standard smaller strike compared to the old style standard deadbolt strike. This is kind of what everybody has shifted to nowadays. And short screws. So, and then your drive-in plate, and this is your screws that hold it on. They still amazingly send out these little security pins, which are designed to snap into the head of the screw after you install it. You take that and you push it in, and it keeps somebody from unscrewing the lock. These are called the Devil's Bane, because if you shove this in there and whack it real good and then turn around 2 weeks later and need the lock rekeyed, with the screw being recessed there, it does give it a better finish, which has always been the point, but it makes it impossible to unscrew this deadbolt without marring up the area trying to get that pin out so that you can unscrew it. Hey, good, thank you. So we have the keys, or brass keys. We'll see that the bitting here is 83578, and I've cut a key to 94669, which is exactly 1 depth below each one of these numbers. And I'll show you why I did that. It's because about a year ago, Schlage decided to stop with the solid brass cylinders and have shifted to a hot metal cylinder style. We drop that, we drop the spring. We will see, compared to the old tailpieces, these tailpieces are not removable. It comes already attached to the lock. These hold up a lot better, I believe, and if you replaced it, you had to take the cap off. You couldn't just take the lock apart and replace it. But that's good. This was a good part of the deadbolt. But if we take this apart, we will see the newest style core, which is not solid brass. We'll see right there that the hole for that pin is really oblonged out already. This is a brand new deadbolt. It does have a plate that drops down in front that is considered a drill protection plate. It would feasibly stop a drill from going through. But we will also see brass pins and kind of what looks like pins that aren't really flush with the lock. And that is the one thing I wanted to point out about these pot metal. I'm just going to call it pot metal. I'm sure they have a fancier name than pot metal for this. But when and the cylinder itself also, if we took it apart, took it out, again, the cylinder is removable. So if we take that cylinder out, we'll see it is not brass at all. The only thing brass in that lock, real brass, I think, is that plate along the top. So when we put it back together, if you look really close right there, you can tell pretty much very easily, and I put this one back together. I guess I shouldn't have since I'm comparing it, but you can tell the big difference in the solid brass plug and the quote pot metal plug. I'm sure some person will correct me on that, but if we look, this is solid brass. This has a lot more slop in it, and we will prove that by looking around for that key that I cut. Where'd it go? I cut a key somewhere around here. I'll show you on this one. Okay, so this is the outside of the same deadbolt with those keys, which is 83578. Factory keyed. You know, obviously it works fine. So I cut this key to 94689, which is one depth below those numbers. And if we put the key in and back it out just a bit, we will see that it works the lock just fine. So one whole depth off compared to the original key, and there's so much non-tolerance or slack in that cylinder that a key that is one whole depth off will still mostly work it easily. And I did have another version of that with the solid brass lock here, but it was this one. And where did that key go? Here it is. So we take that same solid brass cylinder in the 160, and this one is 34449. Now obviously I can't cut a deeper than 9 cut. You can, but so this is pretty much 23339, and I actually cut it a little bit deeper than 9. But if we take that and we back it out and we try to get it to turn, we can see that it absolutely will not turn, because this cylinder, the brass cylinder, has a lot tighter tolerances in it. Will not turn at all compared to this cylinder, which easily turns with a totally incorrect key. So some of you watching this may understand how that affects certain bypass procedures, but overall, just disregarding that change in the plug, which I don't agree with. I wish they'd change it back. I'm not sure they will, because it's a cost savings for them. Overall, with the shielding, which can be removed, by the way, if you have a small hole, you just unscrew this screw and this comes off, and it allows you to use it on a small hole. The if you go all the way back to this template here, 1.5 inch hole, by taking that shielding off, it would fit in that old style hole. So if you were switching out and you had small holes, this works well for that. Most of the time you did have to drill a bigger latch, because some of the wood doors, they drilled a 7/8 inch hole, which this would fit in, but nowadays it's bigger. It has to be 1 inch. So sometimes when you're upgrading from the 160 to the 60 series, you do have to drill a 1 inch hole in the edge of your door for the latch bigger, which can be problematic because your bit wants to wander. I take a step drill bit and notch it so that it'll center with the spade bit, which makes it safer and easier to drill your hole. So that's it. Again, Schlage, aside from that 360 series that we have back here, which is no longer in use, and aside from the most recent, about a year ago, change to non-solid brass cylinders, this Schlage B60 series, the B62 double cylinder, or B60 in for the single cylinder, is the best on the market for deadbolts for residential, basically because of the latch. Most forced entries and stuff, or break-ins nowadays, are caused by a forced entry kicking a door. The solid built nature of this latch and the thicker latch, aside from the very sloppy little short screws and non-security plate options that the old ones came with. Of course, there is a version, a slightly different model number that comes with the security package. But overall, if you buy one of these from anywhere nowadays, you're most likely going to get this smaller plate. So if you're going to use a plate like this, which we do not recommend, then definitely use 3-inch screws for it. Ideally, you would use a security plate or a longer security strip of some kind, because putting this on your door with these short screws for the latch is absolutely pointless. There's no point almost in besides holding the door closed and leaving a lock on there. Also, the screws here are short. When I'm installing these locks, I use 1 5/8 screws, and you ask why that size? Because the 2 1/8 inch hole starts at about right here. You can't go much above the 2 1/8 inch, or the 1 5/8 length here, before the screws go into the 2 1/8 inch hole, which would affect you putting the lock in, because they would hit right about here. So 1 5/8 gives it more wood to bite into, and in my opinion would protect it a little bit more against a forced entry. So that's it about Schlage Deadbolts and the history of said Schlage Deadbolts. I hope you enjoyed watching, and give me a thumbs up, a like for this video if you don't mind. I appreciate it. And if you'd like to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, and we will talk to y'all later. Thanks.